Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our workshop. The future of SMR belongs to those who get up early, so it's really important to start your journey early. My name is Catherine Bellamy, and with my colleagues, we represent Frazer-Nash, a leading engineering and project delivery consultancy. We work with nuclear vendors, operators, and regulators all across the globe. And we are proud that through our expertise, we're helping to make the world safer, more secure, and more sustainable. If I may, let me introduce you to my colleagues today. On my far right, Stuart Yellowlees, who is our client director for SMR. In the middle, Kevin Murray, who is our market group manager for civil nuclear, and Richard Metcalf, who's one of our senior consultants who advises clients on safety and engineering in highly regulated industries, including civil nuclear. So today, we are looking at SMRs. And we know that this industry is going to be worth $650 billion by 2050. But how can we make SMRs a reality? We want to start our workshop today by looking at the proposition for SMRs. And essentially here, we're looking at two very interesting challenges. On the one hand, how do we meet the energy trilemma? And on the other, how do we mitigate the very well-documented challenges that large infrastructure programs have had traditionally? And how can we overcome these to achieve global, repeatable, low-cost solutions to achieve low-cost electricity? Now, Kevin, you've got some very interesting stats to share, haven't you, about demand?
I do, Catherine, thank you. So just looking at the value proposition for the SMR sector as a whole, now clearly the underpinning component of any value proposition is a clear market demand, and we can see that. So the need to solve and address that energy trilemma is an absolute imperative as we look at that 2050 horizon. So starting with the demand for clean energy, we're currently seeing the fastest ever rise in global electricity demand. And if you look at that, boil that down from a statistical point of view, 4% year on year means that we're adding the annual energy consumption of a mature industrialized economy such as Japan each and every year, which brings things into really stark contrast. Security, so again, looking at the geopolitical situation, looking at energy, I guess, as a lever for geopolitical positioning. Clearly that is an unsustainable position, and nations are trying to regain sovereignty and control over critical national infrastructure and energy policy. And also, again, looking at the security at a local level of a reliable power supply, so major outages hitting the headlines in Spain, Portugal, and southern France in recent times as well. And from a cost perspective, clearly the need is there for the market for secure, reliable energy, but it needs to be cost effective as well. So looking at the global picture, as we will be in this session, but from a UK perspective, looking at that as a microcosm of the global energy pricing picture, industrial energy costs are high. I've got some statistics here just from Catherine, if you could accelerate that one. So looking at the UK, our energy costs right now on an industrial basis are 2 times higher than the US. They are 46% higher than the global average, 75% higher than Sweden, and 1/3 higher than the Netherlands. Now, these are all nations that we have picked out for analysis from these stats that are embracing SMR. So the UK, through Great British Energy Nuclear, have recently put fired the starting pistol on the UK technology deployment, and Sweden and the Netherlands are also embarking on their own journey to bring SMR into that overall energy picture. And you can really see from an energy cost perspective, SMR can really come there and make a difference, addressing all 3 aspects of that trilemma.
Now, Stuart, turning to you, looking at the numbers for the real challenges around large-scale nuclear programs, makes for pretty bleak reading, doesn't it?
I think it's well recognised that large-scale infrastructure programs are problematic. If you look at a sample here we have of over 3,000 projects globally, the most energy projects overrun by a factor of 40%. Major nuclear programs run over by a factor of 2. So if we're going to see nuclear as a key part of meeting that energy trilemma, if we want to see nuclear growing in size so that it maintains at least equal to the split of the energy provision we have today, we need to do something different. And SMRs are the opportunity to do something different. The ability to actually use modular construction approaches and reduce the amount of actual workforce and complexity on site. Using factory-built environments in order to bring repeatability and to manage high-quality components. So the ability to actually approach this in a different way that mitigates the issues that we see with large infrastructure programs is the opportunity we have. But what we should recognize is at the moment that's a narrative and not something we've yet proven as a sector. So together, our challenge is to prove that this will actually be something different and demonstrate that nuclear can provide predictable, reliable, low-cost energy production.
So I think what we're saying is the value proposition for global SMRs is that it can meet a need and mitigate challenges. But if we are to create a global, repeatable solution that is going to give us low-carbon electricity and energy for the future, we've identified 5 key conditions that have to be in place for this to happen. And we're going to talk about those now. So these key conditions are policy readiness, regulatory readiness, infrastructure readiness, technology readiness, and delivery readiness. So we're going to look, first of all, at policy readiness. So our question here is, we all know there's a growing demand for energy, but are policymakers around the world keeping up with this pace for demand? Now, Rich, you've done some really interesting analysis here, haven't you, that looks at the different figures for meeting current and future demand against the current policy commitments around the world. What does your analysis tell us?
So the key bit here, we've seen data like this today, yesterday, all throughout, pledging what we're going to be at in 2050. Now, the question is, does it add up? Of course. We need, by 2050, to maintain 9% of the global energy capacity as nuclear, an additional around 900 gigawatts of electricity. Currently, we have 70 under construction, and we've firmly committed to an additional 110. So that takes us to about a quarter of the way there. But then you start to look at what's retiring, how much energy we're going to lose from nuclear production, and that takes us down to less than 10. So policymakers really need to commit more to this. We need firm commitments, we need lobbying, we need putting your money where your mouth is, to be frank, to kind of say, we are committed to nuclear, whether that is SMRs, AMRs, or gigawatt scale nuclear reactors.
Thanks, Rich. Now, throughout our workshop today, we've been quite punchy in the advice that we want to give to stakeholders who are working in our industry. And we've identified some key stakeholder groups here. So you can see policymakers, investors, and vendor teams. Now, Stuart, you've got some very frank advice, I think, for policymakers, haven't you?
I think if we measure the success of policymakers by where you can see firm commitments that are measurable in the marketplace, that we're committing to do something. If you look at the statistics we just talked about, there are 10 committed SMRs, but we need 50, because we need those 50 coming online in the early 2030s, which means we need to be committing to them now. So my challenge is policy still a narrative, or are we actually genuinely making the right commitments that we need in order for this to be successful?
Fantastic. So we've been talking about governments and their importance, but we want to ask the question now, are governments supporting regulators? Because we know that it's absolutely essential to have a very supportive regulatory environment if we are to maintain safety standards while deploying at pace. So we're asking the question, are governments supporting regulators? Now, Stuart, you've done some really interesting research here, haven't you, looking at the countries globally that have committed or who are already deploying nuclear against those who have agreed to share their regulatory standards. What did your findings show?
You can see in the graphic here, there are a number of different countries that are either already producing electricity through nuclear means, are already constructing, are planning, actively planning, or they are thinking about nuclear as part of their energy solution going forwards. Rather than going through the list of countries, you can graphically see that that tells us we have a global market. If we've got a global market, now my challenge is, does the regulatory regime back that up? Each of those areas either has an independent regulator or in some cases doesn't yet have a mature regulator. If we want to see this as a truly enabled global market where regulators are enabling at-pace deployment of nuclear, let's look at where we've got collaboration between regulators already. And the dotted lines show, yes, we do. But it's not at the scale of a global market. It's still isolated when you look at that global picture. And that's collaboration. That doesn't mean harmonization. So therefore, we still have to be able to address differences between regulators are driving up cost of site-specific or country-specific design requirements and or requiring over-engineering so that the plant can actually meet multiple regulatory requirements. So understanding the pathway to addressing those differences is vital. And at the moment, we would challenge whether that's currently in a supportive, enabling fashion yet.
So throughout our workshop, we're having a series of talking points, which we hope we'll have the chance to discuss with you over cocktails a little later on, so please do join us. And our talking point right here is, can regulators be protectors and enablers? And we were quite intrigued by this quote that we saw recently by the UK senior superintending inspector from the Office for Nuclear Regulation, who challenged whether regulation is a significant factor in timelines. So we'd love to hear your views from whichever country you're based in. What do you feel about this? Tell us your experiences and your insights. So once again, here we are at our key takeaways, our absolute advice for the key stakeholders in this area. And Kevin, you had some interesting advice here, didn't you, on regulatory readiness?
Absolutely, Catherine. And just to build on Stuart's points from earlier, you know, we're looking at the pace and the scale with which the sector needs to move. The vendors and developers who are going to make a real difference in terms of getting us to where we need to be by 2050, they're already on a journey. They're looking at global fleet deployment. They're building global supply chains. We need, from the regulatory community, a global approach. We need to make sure that local inertia is not going to be a constraint towards what is already shaping up to be a significantly challenging ramp-up in SMR deployment.
So we know that it's absolutely essential to have the right regulatory environment to enable safe deployment of brand new technology and for it to be safely implemented. And that brings us neatly to our next area, which is technology readiness. Now, currently, there are over 70 different kinds of technology globally being developed. Now, Stuart, you've been looking at the technology readiness levels of all those various technologies. What have you found?
I think if you look across these 70-plus different designs that are around at the moment, they're all at very different technology readiness levels. You can see that the majority of those are still at the preliminary and concept design phase, with only a small number that are actually at the operational phase. Now, what does that mean in terms of the marketplace itself? Will those 70 different designs survive? And I think we all know the answer will be no. So the ones that do survive, how will they survive? And if I just use the example from Apple, that you focus on your market and your client requirements before you allow that to lead your technology, not the other way around. So are we clear on the problem we're solving? Are we clear on what are we engineering for? And are we clear on when engineering is complete?
So we think it could be a question of survival of the fastest. So if we're thinking about SMR developers, what factors are going to help you to win the race, to beat the competition? So if you're a vendor in the audience today, tell us your views, because we'd love to hear them. And we have some key takeaways ourselves on technology readiness. And Richard, you've got some killer insight here for vendor team that you want to share.
Yeah, the key point here is, are you ready to prioritize your repeatable, standard, low-cost solution? Are you following the market? Are you being sold a dream with your perfect, over-engineered technology? And where are you going to focus to get the most efficient rollout possible? At the end of the day, off-takers just want power. They don't need the snazziest, most perfect, most innovative source of power. They just want electricity. So how do we get there?
So need is absolutely at the heart of everything that we're discussing today. And if we're thinking about need, we have to consider end user requirement. And so this brings us on to our next area, which is infrastructure readiness. Now, here we're looking at the technologies involved and what is the requirement for the grid. Now, Rich, you've got some thoughts here.
Yeah, so this is looking specifically at vendors, where they want to sell their power to and who they're partnering with. Now, if we look at the figures on the screen, you can see that about half are looking at committing just to industry, data centers, as has been mentioned so many times this week, and private microgrids. Is that a bit closed-minded? Does it introduce more risk? It definitely does. How are your investors going to be ready for potentially low capacity factors of new technologies? How are you building in resilience and robustness to potential dropouts, changes? Is it a bit naive to look predominantly at these microgrids instead of opening yourself up to the wider options, as the other half is suggesting, saying we can provide to both? And that appetite for risk is going to be really key here. As a vendor, as an investor, what gives you the most opportune, the greatest opportunity for actually getting power onto the grid as soon as possible in a repeatable manner?
And for our talking point here, we want to ask the big question: what is the infrastructure requirement? And Kevin, we wanted to kind of touch here a little bit, didn't we, on the work that Frazer-Nash has been doing for clients on cogeneration. What learnings have we found there?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. So, yeah, Frazer-Nash, as well as our parent company, KBR, are active across the entire energy spectrum. So, obviously, we are nuclear specialists, but we work across the process sector, across the transmission network, and further afield as well. So, I think we've got a unique place in terms of that insight around the broad range of stakeholders who feed into the deployment journey that's ahead of us for new uses for nuclear energy. So, the cogeneration question, looking at advanced modular reactors in particular, that high temperature heat that can really make a difference. And we're talking about synthetic aviation fuel, and we're talking hydrogen, ammonia production as well. So we've carried out some work within Frazer-Nash looking at potential siting within the UK for advanced nuclear technologies, where we're looking at that sweet spot where you have grid connectivity, looking at the gas transmission network, and looking at the other natural resources and enabling infrastructure that's going to be the best fit for an advanced nuclear technology deployment. So again, it's a conversation we are looking forward to leading in the years ahead as new technologies come to the fore and are looking to make a difference, not just in terms of power to the grid, but also looking at the broader industrial decarbonisation and energy production.
And we were thinking here about what advice can we give right now. And I was thinking the advice that I think we need to give to the industry is the advice that I give to my friends who are dating. Stop chasing bad boys and find yourself a good man. Because yes, it's very exciting to go after the latest attractive thing, but actually, for your long-term health, wealth, and happiness, what you really need is a good, dependable, reliable partner that you can trust. And so that is our advice to the industry. And this brings us on to our final sector, which is looking at delivery readiness. Now here, we've been looking a lot about the question of public versus private, and this is absolutely at the heart of our discussion here. And we've kind of badged this as Google versus the government, question mark. And we're sort of asking the question, is the winner going to be the one with the biggest risk appetite? Now, Kevin, you've been looking at some extraordinary data here that sets out the energy consumption of various technology companies and why they might really want to forge relationships and partnerships with SMR and AMR developers. Kevin, what have you found?
Yeah, in terms of the demand signals, and something that is really informing and bolstering the pipeline for advanced nuclear developers, is the hyperscalers. So we're looking at the relationships that have already been signposted. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but you can see the likes of Amazon and Google hitching their brand to some of the SMR and AMR developers who are here with us at the conference today. So phenomenal, and they are going to be making a difference, and these partnerships are really giving the confidence from a technology developer perspective to really kick their plans into gear and aggressively go after that fleet deployment journey. Now, to put that demand signal into some kind of context, we've got some stats here, so a couple of bar charts just looking at, well, what do these tech companies actually need in terms of energy consumption? And so quite startling statistics. So you can see Samsung at the top of the list there. So their energy consumption is commensurate with nations such as Ireland and Serbia. Now that is just phenomenal in terms of that demand that is coming down the line. And again, looking at data centers as a whole, again, you can see that that demand signal there, again, from an energy usage perspective, commensurate with entire nations. So yeah, clearly, these hyperscalers and broader tech companies are going to be playing a huge part in the conversation around the future of advanced nuclear.
And we sort of come on to our final talking points here of how do we deliver? How can we transform the global energy market? What are the key ingredients for success? And we've got a global problem that needs a global solution. How do we leverage our global experience and expertise? And I have to come for our final takeaway to Stuart, who has got a very punchy piece of advice to all our key stakeholders here on screen. Stuart.
I think from a supply chain perspective, very simply, get involved. There's a huge opportunity here to get behind the delivery of this. It isn't just about our capacity and our capability, which is second to none as an industry. It's not just about an international footprint. It's about the opportunity here to build true international relationships and partnerships. It's about those collective partnering behaviors that are going to make this a success. This has never been done before. I said at the beginning that we've never delivered SMRs on this scale of deployment at the pace that we need to do so. So this is a real opportunity to rally the sector together and work together collaboratively to make this true. Thank you.
Now, we started this workshop asking or setting out our position that the future of SMR belongs to those who get up early. Now, Kevin, can we afford to hit snooze and go back to sleep?
We absolutely cannot, Catherine. The alarm is sounding. The alarm is not going off anytime soon. So really, we just wanted this session to be a bit of a call to arms. We've looked at it from a number of different perspectives, and we've talked about some pretty phenomenal demand signals for us all. As Stuart said, the opportunity is there. We cannot stay in bed. The alarm ain't going to stop. So let's get out of bed, stand up, and pull our socks up as Richard is demonstrating the Frazer-Nash nuclear socks, which are available on their stand, as well as the cocktails in just a moment. Back over to you, Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. It was wonderful to see you all. I hope that you'll come over with us and keep the conversation going to our stand. We've got some special cocktails for today, the SM Margarita and the SM Martini. So please do join us, and thank you for your time.